It's way too low. Oh, okay, that'll do. Okay. Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome back to Super Kaiju Binge. Shit, I meant to do this last week. Oh well, I'll be doing 2 videos this week, I promise, so fret not. Today on Super Kaiju Binge, as promised in the last episode, oh my god, I am so, like, shiny and greasy. What the fuck? As promised, today on Super Kaiju Binge, I will be reviewing my favorite Gamera film of the entire Gamera franchise. Not even sugarcoating my opinion on this one. Today, I will be reviewing 1996's Gamera 2 Attack of Legion, or Advent of Legion, or the Supreme Guardian of the Universe, or Invasion of Legion. I prefer the name Gamera 2 Advent of Legion because that sounds a lot more distinct. Attack of Legion sounds generic, and Invasion of Legion, while it's appropriate, doesn't roll off the tongue nearly as well. Advent of Legion sounds way more badass. And Victoria is already here. Hello. So, Gamera 2 Advent of Legion is, of course, a 1996 Japanese kaiju film, once again directed by Shizuke Kaneko and with special effects done by Shinji Higuchi. Produced by Daiei and distributed by Toho, the film is the 10th installment of the Gamera franchise and is the second film in the franchise's Heisei period, serving as a direct sequel to Gamera Guardian of the Universe. Gamera Guardian of the Universe was released, indeed, July. Oh my god! It was released July 13th, 1996, and I'm reviewing this on July 13th, 2023, making this the 27th anniversary of Gamera 2 Advent of Legion. Pure coincidence, I shit you not. But a happy one nonetheless. Gamera 2 Advent of Legion, to quote, oh wow, that's lame. Really? What? Oh, fuck you. Anyway, there's not as much to say about Advent of Legion as there is Guardian or the next movie, but with the success of Gamera Guardian of the Universe, of course, Dai immediately wanted to cash in on that first movie's success, so this movie was thrown into production almost immediately after the first movie. A lot of the same cast and crew members, and of course, the director, special effects, and music were done by the same people, carried over into this movie. And one of the suit actors from Guardian of the Universe came back as Gamera, Akira Ohashi. Um, and to quote, what's his name? Bill Wurster from Zazubar. The kaiju fan base tends to be um in one of two categories when it comes to Gamera Guardian or Gamera 2. There are those who love it and say that they like it either as much or a little bit more than Guardian of the Universe. And then there are others that say that Gamera 2 is the weakest link of the Heisei Gamera trilogy. And as I just alluded to, I am definitely firmly in the first camp. I am a big fan of Gamera 2. It's my favorite Gamera film of the whole franchise. I think it's honestly one of the most underrated Gamera films of the whole series. And while Admittedly, especially with this most recent viewing, it is relatively low on that list. I would list Advent of Legion as being one of my favorite kaiju films of all time. This is a pretty kick-ass monster movie, in my opinion. I'm not really sure which of the two camps is the majority. It seems to be pretty evenly split, with every um, detractor from Gamera 2 that I've seen a defender for Gamera 2. It does seem to be pretty split 50-50. But yeah, I'm definitely very firmly in camp A. I love Gamera 2. It's my favorite of the series, and I have quite a lot of good things to say about it. Admittedly, it's not quite as strong as I used to hold it in higher regard for two reasons. Um, one of which has to do with a more recent film that's been released. Um, as far as personal history goes for Gamera 2, reading up on Gamera movies on Wikipedia when I was young, Gamera 2 was the one of the three Heisei trilogy that really stuck out to me the most as the one that I really, really wanted to see. And this was the one I was most excited for whenever I got my hands on that Mill Creek Gamera set. Despite this being my favorite Gamera movie, I've only seen Gamera 2 maybe about 5 or 6 times, but the film does hold up quite strongly. And the first time that I did see this movie when I got the Gamera, I didn't even watch this movie on the Mill Creek Gamera set. I watched because not long after that, I got my hands on the Gamera Legacy collection, and I decided to stick with that because it was on DVD, and it was on that set that I watched Gamera 2 for the first time, and I was very impressed, and I immediately liked it much more than um, Gamera Guardian of the Universe. And yeah, that's really all I have to say. Seen it only about 5 or 6 times, and I like it about the same every time I watch it. Though now that I have seen it with a fresh mind, and I actually haven't seen this movie pretty much since 2018, my thoughts on it are a lot more solidified, and I do see maybe not flaws, but some of the weaker elements regarding this movie. But still, overall, this is a kick ass monster movie. Jumping straight into the plot, spoilers too. I don't think this will be a super long video, to be honest, because I do like this movie a lot, but I don't have a whole lot to say about it. Because, well, and this isn't a con by any means, but I can definitely see story wise, um, Gamera 2 kind of has middle chapter syndrome in that it's just the middle of the trilogy. But that's okay though. Before we begin, a word from our sponsor, Fanta. That's a first. Ah, orange. Orange, you glad I haven't blown your eardrums out yet? A year has passed since the battle between Gamera and Gauss, and Japan has struggled to rebuild its cities in the meantime. The military has kept a cautious vigil on the nation's coast, but so far Gamera has yet to return. Then, on the night of a meteor shower while out on a field trip, science instructor Midori Honami and her group of kids witness a huge meteor plunge into the mountain snow. The next night, two security guards are horrified as they see large insect like creatures stealing glass bottles from a nearby warehouse, one of which being Inspector Osako. Yeah, now working as a security guard because he's a complete bitch. Um, soon after, the entire city of Sapporo is covered with strange plants and the link between these events soon becomes clear. This series of bizarre incidents reveal a new threat to the land of the rising sun. It's a little melodramatic. The meteor has carried with it a species of extraterrestrials. These aliens, which have a unique form of biochemistry that involves silicone, have set up a hive in the bowels of the city's subway tunnels, deliberately nurturing a plant that grows out of the subway and into the city. Soon, a gigantic pod erupts from a building, and LTC Watarase of the Ground Self Defense Force realizes that it is dramatically raising the city's oxygen levels. Working together with the swift minded Miss Honami, he realizes that the aliens are building a huge biological launch pad. The increased oxygen will aid the creatures in exploding the flower, catapulting its seed into space so that they can colonize yet another world. The military can only watch helplessly as any attempt to destroy the plant would destroy all of Sapporo. But just as all hope is lost, Gamera emerges from the sea and heads toward the besieged city. He tears the flower out by its roots, but is ambushed by a swarm of the alien insect soldiers. As Gamera thrashes to rid himself of the attacking insects, a nearby soldier names them Legion, in reference to something similar about a person possessed by many evil spirits called Legion mentioned in the Holy Bible. It's kind of a ominous way that the actor in the movie delivers it. My name is Legion, for we are many. Um, Not having that many religious overtones in this film, thank God. It's only used just to be cool, to quote the audio commentary. Gamera is forced to retreat just as the monstrous Legion Queen, the Mother Legion, bursts out of the ground and flies off to start a second hive. Her wings are damaged by fighter jets, but she survives. Again, a Legion flower blooms, this time in the city of Sendai, and again Gamera attempts to stop its explosion. He is intercepted by the Mother Legion, which makes short work of Gamera, impaling him with her sharp legs and blasting part of his shell off with her horn beam. Sensing the detonation of her pod approaching, Legion leaves Gamera for dead and burrows off. Gamera limps toward the plant, destroying it by knocking it down before it launches its seed into space, but the flower still explodes and completely annihilates the city of Sendai, seemingly killing Gamera. Japan's military and scientists race to find Legion's weakness, but have so far found only one clue. The smaller symbiotic Legion are attracted to any electromagnetic source, such as power lines. While this may enable the army to distract them, it has the unfortunate side effect of drawing them to Tokyo. With the failure of both their previous attempts at propagating their kind, the Legion are growing desperate. Asagi travels to Sendai, where Gamera lies comatose, and as she tries to reach out to him, the orichalcum magatama that enables their bond shatters. Gamera awakens, but at the sacrifice of his connection to humanity. Mother Legion marches onward towards Tokyo with the intention of planting a third and final flower, but Gamera intercepts her at Ashikaga. She spawns a swarm of insect soldiers against him, but the military manages to draw them off and destroy them using a power station's electrical pylons. Gamera fights on, but is unable to get his attacks past Mother Legion's claws, which generate an electromagnetic field that dissipates Gamera's fireballs. After the JSDF managed to blow off several of these claws, Gamera manages to tear off her horn and she momentarily collapses in defeat. But enraged, Mother Legion gets back up and begins lashing Gamera with crimson energy tendrils, searing Gamera's skin and rapidly overpowering him. On the verge of defeat, Gamera then looks into the sky and roars, and light begins to shine down upon him. As Legion closes in, Gamera's chest opens up and fires out a massive, powerful plasma beam. Legion is hit by this beam and is blown completely to pieces. Gamera glances towards the human onlookers and then ascends into the morning sky. As they watch Gamera fade into the distance, mankind is unsettled by his power and trembles lest should he ever view humanity as an enemy, thus ending the film. So how about this plot? Well, two things. One, it definitely does harken back to a lot more familiar elements from the Showa Gamera series. This movie is not nearly as mythological or mystical as Guardian insinuates, and it's not even exactly like Gamera versus Gauss or Gamera versus Berrigan. This feels a lot more like a classic Gamera alien invasion movie. It still has a updated modern twist to the alien invasion formula, but the format and style of this is a lot more similar to something like Gamera versus Virus or Gamera versus Zigra. It's way better than either of those fucking movies, believe you me, but um it still does feel similar. But what I like about it is that similar to Guardian of the Universe, it does take a old idea and give a fresh spin on it to make it feel new but familiar, which I greatly appreciate. It's one of the biggest one of the biggest things I love about this movie's plot. But the biggest thing I love about this movie's plot, number 2, yeah, I was right. This movie is very similar to Godzilla King of the Monsters. Maybe not quite as similar as I initially thought, but there are a lot of similarities between Advent of Legion and King of the Monsters. Um, Both monsters are seen as defenders of the Earth against an alien threat. There's a drastic increase in action. Both monsters team up with the military somewhat indirectly, especially more so in this case, but humanity does make the conscious decision to aid the title monster in battle against an alien threat. Both movies, at, by the halfway point, have the monster be taken out of the movie for a while by a massive explosion. And both movies require a different kind of explosion or some kind of Deus Ex Machina type thing on humanity's part in order to revive the monster. It's more so for humanity from humanity and King of the Monsters, but it is still kind of similar. And both monsters, when they're resurrected, they give a massive call to arms and they tear ass their way to fight off the alien threat. And both movies end with a massive explosive finale that involves the alien threat being blown to pieces by a massive explosion. Again, it's a little bit different in both movies, but yeah, these movies are very similar. And I can't help but love this movie for that. But with that being said, I do prefer King of the Monsters to this movie. There's things that King of the Monsters takes from this movie and does 10 times better. But what this movie does, I still really do like and really do appreciate. So, with all that being said, um, let us jump into the pros for Gamera 2. A couple of these are kind of minor. That's why I have them at the beginning. Pro number 1 is the snowy atmosphere. Another similarity to King of the Monsters, though more so for this movie. This movie does take place. The whole movie takes place. Oh no, yeah, the whole movie takes place during winter. and the whole time it looks cold. Um, and that's kind of unique for monster movies. You don't really see a whole lot of monster movies that take place in and around snow. The only other two that I can think of, well, the first one, I was gonna say Pacific Rim Uprising, but we only see snow in like the last 10 minutes of the movie. But of course, there's all the Antarctica segments and Godzilla King of the Monsters. There's the ending scene for Son of Godzilla. And no, that's Tokusatsu. I'm not really gonna count that. But for monster movies, I think that's about it. Yeah, off the top of my head, not counting like Kamen Rider or Ultraman, which I can think of a few examples. But yeah, for monster movies, I can only think of these three. But I really appreciate that. It makes this movie feel a little bit more unique. And I like fall and I like winter and I like snow. It's pretty to look at and it's a refreshing change of scenery. Pro number two, there's an aspect of this that goes into another pro. So I will say this is probably the most violent movie in the entire Gamera series. Gamera the Brave kind of comes close. Um, well, the Gamera series overall has had quite a bit of monster gore. This movie doesn't skirt on that either, but there's some surprising human gore in this film, where the humans are attacked by the Legion soldiers. And probably the most violent scene in the whole movie is when a train conductor in the subways of Sapporo is killed by one of the Legion soldiers. We don't see what happens to him, but he grabs onto a window on a train door, and there's a huge geyser of blood that splatters all over the door. And that caught me so far off guard the first time I saw this movie. I literally gasped out loud. I was just so unexpectedly shocked. I was like, oh, damn. Hello. Um, and I do think that this movie, I don't necessarily think it's darker, but I think it does take itself a bit more seriously than Gamera Guardian of the Universe. It to a degree that I appreciate. Another similarity to Godzilla King of the Monsters, because this movie's threat, well, it's not exactly global, but it has the potential to be global. Uh, I'll elaborate on that more in just a minute, but the situation feels dire and serious, just like in King of the Monsters, which I appreciate. So I'll elaborate more on this when I get to another pro, but yeah, this movie is quite violent. Pro number three is this movie is quite colorful. There's lots of so when the meteor first crashes onto Earth and when all the Legion flowers are blooming, they give off this bright, vibrant green light that comes from the sky, and it looks like the Aurora Borealis. It's a very vibrant, bright shade of green, and it's quite pleasant to look at. Uh, Queen Legion, she has a lot of blue, bright blue and bright red colors, specifically her eyes and her beam attacks. When she is at her normal state, she has these bright insect-like eyes that glow this very vibrant, bright blue. And when she fires off her uh, beam horn, or horn beam, excuse me, it's a very vibrant and bright shade of blue. And when she's enraged, her eyes glow a very bright, vibrant red. And they're very striking and pleasant to look at as well. And there's lots of yellows and oranges that emanate from Gamera. Literally, when he fires his fireballs, there are much brighter orangey yellow shades of color. and also when he summons his energy from the earth to empower his ultimate plasma fireball. It's a very bright, vibrant shade of orange, and it's both badass and also very pleasant to look at. So this movie is quite colorful. Probably, honestly, the most colorful of the three Heisei Gamera movies. Maybe is the most colorful of the whole series, honestly. Pro number 4 is the music score for this movie is pretty damn awesome. Once again, this film is composed by Kawatone, and the mythical qualities of the film are kind of downplayed for the most part. But he does still carry over a couple familiar tracks from Guardian of the Universe into this movie. But this movie's score sounds a lot more reminiscent of something that's more sci-fi. And as Shizuke Kaneko describes this movie, he describes it as a war film, which I think is quite appropriate. So there's a lot of militaristic sounding tracks throughout this movie to sound a lot more badass, a lot more bombastic, and a lot more militaristic. Um, to make this movie feel more both grounded and serious, but also gives the sense that it's a lot more action packed and a lot more science fictiony and alien invasiony, which I do appreciate. This probably is, though, my least favorite score of the three Gamera Heisei films, but that's not a bad thing. This is just the one that sticks out to me the least. Um, that's actually one of the strongest things I can say about the next movie. But yeah, I like the music, but it's just the one that connects to me the least. But Cawatoni, of course, is still a master, and he brings his A game 100% with this movie. Oop. Oh, damn it. Hold on. Um, Pro number 5. Once again, from Godzilla King of the Monsters, one of the biggest things I praise about this film is the cast camaraderie. Now, I have something kind of negative to say about the cast for this movie, but this movie does retain the feel of Godzilla King of the Monsters in the fact that all of the human characters in this movie are working together the whole time. There's no tension, doubt, conflict, or hesitation from any of the characters. There's no big egos clashing. There's no skeptics here just trying to be a stick in the mud and be a thorn in everybody's ass just for the sake of such. Everybody in this movie sees, hey, we have an alien invasion on our hands here, and this alien invasion is gonna fuck us up the ass with no lube and a spiked dildo. To not to be crude, but this is a big serious problem. We don't have time, energy, or resources to dilly dally around, sit on our hands and our thumbs up our butts and do nothing. We need to take action, and we need to take action now. And we need to settle all of our differences and put our heads together and come up with a solution for this problem. And again, it's not quite as strong as Godzilla King of the Monsters, but it's very close and it's very similar. The military, well, they're at first they tried their best to take care of Legion themselves. When they finally do understand that they can't defeat Gamera, or they can't defeat Legion without supporting Gamera, and Gamera can't defeat the Legion entirely without the humans' help. The military says, "You know what? Fuck it. Support Gamera. Give him all the help he needs." It's a bit brief and it's not as strong as King of the Monsters, But as soon as that energy is on screen, I'm just all for it. I've said this before. I love when humans team up with monsters. It's not very common, unfortunately, but when it does happen, I just eat it up. I love when humans team up with monsters. Probably my favorite example is Godzilla King of the Monsters, but Gamera 2 does it very well. And another thing about the or the cast camaraderie is the military and the scientists work together to figure out what's going on with the Legion and what to do in order to evacuate civilians, um, set up military blockades, study the Legion, study how they work, study their life cycle, and they share information and they don't dilly dally and they don't uh, um, mess up their words. They're very direct and to the point, and they explain all the scientific technobabble in layman's terms so that the military can understand what's going on. Again, there's no conflict and there's no tension. There's no bickering. There's no nothing. Everybody in this movie is working together. The military works with scientists. Scientists work with civilians. The military works with civilians. Everybody is putting their heads together in determining a solution to this massive problem. And I love it. Monster movies don't do this enough, in my opinion. Films in general don't do this enough, in my opinion. And it's like what the guy for the audio commentary for this movie says. Isn't it nice when everybody just works together for once? Yeah, it really is. I love it. Cracking open number two. Bro, number six is the unique alien invasion plot. Now, at very first glance, this could be seen just, yeah, as another typical alien invasion plot. Alien monsters wanting to come down from the stars and invade our world for its resources because their planet is dying. But we quickly learn this is not the case at all. This is a very unique kind of alien invasion, as these are literally an invasive species. We see this all the time in actual Earth biology and ecosystems. Um, Certain animals can only live in one part of the world, and certain animals also can be very detrimental and destructive to a new biosphere that they're unfamiliar with and wreak havoc on it. Um, Take mosquitoes, for example. Those technically are one of the biggest invasive species of animals on the entire world. They just do nothing but cause destruction for any biosphere that they enter, feeding on uh feeding on blood and spreading all this disease, death, and famine. Rats are also an invasive species as they just do nothing but destroy any habitat they inhabit. Um Um, Snakehead fish are also considered invasive species, and giant salamanders of all things. This is the one that honestly comes to mind. I learned this from the show River Monsters. There's a species of giant salamander in Japan, actually, and then there's a Chinese um, breed of giant salamander. But in both Japan and China, I believe there do exist hybrid giant salamanders, and these creatures are considered to be pests and invasive species. They're literally crossbreeding of Chinese and Japanese giant salamanders, and they are considered a no-no. This movie incorporates real life science into this alien invasion, and I think it's genius. The Legion are not here to use, or at least initially, they're not here to like kill humans or kill off humanity. they're here as an invasive species purely just to spread their kind of similar to the xenomorphs, honestly. They're here just purely to spread across the entire galaxy and spread their numbers to as many as possible, spreading through the entire galaxy. And I think it's genius. Kind of similar to Tremors. The filmmakers took inspiration from real life animals and biology and applied that to fiction, because they do stay in this movie, even though that this is an alien species. They share a hive mind very similar to bees and ants, of which they compare the legion's life cycle very similarly to something like bees or ants. um and also, yeah, it is kind of similar to the xenomorphs from the Alien series, and I love it. I think this is one of the most unique and inventive and creative alien invasion plots I've ever seen. Might be the only one of its kind, honestly. Yeah, maybe. So, speaking of which, pro number 7 is the Queen Legion herself, or Mother Legion. I prefer the term Queen Legion. Again, kind of similar to the Xenomorphs. I'll just call this the Queen Legion. The Queen Legion, aside from Gamera, is my favorite monster of the entire Gamera franchise. She is very intricate. She looks so badass. And she is not my favorite kind of kaiju, but I am actually a big fan. Bill Wurster stated in his review of Gamera 2 that he's not a big fan of insect kaiju. I am. I really like insect kaiju. I think they make for very intimidating threats because they're so inhuman. That kind of gives them this very, no pun intended, because she is an alien, but insect kaiju just give off this very threatening, inhuman vibe because they look so alien and they look so unfamiliar. They look very cold and emotionless and um honestly just kind of scary and spooky. And even though she is an alien insect, because she's very insect like, that kind of does tap into the fear of creepy crawlies, of which I have. And also, she has these human sized uh, ants or bees at her disposal with the Legion soldiers that also tap into that fear of the creepy crawlies, especially when Gamera gets swarmed by all of the Legion soldiers. That scene kind of makes me itch because I'm afraid of bugs. So yeah, I love Queen Legion. She looks really badass. She looks very alien, but she does still look very sort of familiar because she does obviously look very insect like. And she kind of lacks a personality, but I think that's a good thing because it makes her look cold, emotionless, and threatening. She's just an alien, one track minded monster, and I love it. Also, insect kaiju tend to be very formidable foes. They can be either fast and agile because they usually can fly, or they can be like tanks and be heavily armored and very tough to kill. Legion kind of is both. She only flies for a couple scenes, but even still, Queen Legion is a total tank, and Gamera literally has to pull out all of his tricks to defeat Queen Legion. So she puts up quite a fight against Gamera, and I would hands down say that Queen Legion might be Gamera's most challenging foe. Yeah, because while Gamera gets some good licks in towards Queen Legion, she absolutely fucks Gamera up in this movie. This has something to do with the monster action. I'm just going to say it now. Queen Legion gives Gamera his most hellacious beating of the entire Gamera franchise. Gamera takes quite a beating in the next film as well too, but I think this is where Gamera gets hit, like the highest amount of injuries in the entire series. I'll hold off on that in just a minute. But yeah, I love Queen Legion. She looks really badass. She's very unique. I love her sound effects. I love her powers. I love her design. Um, I love insect kaiju. Yeah, I love Queen Legion. She's totally badass. But pro number 9 is or no, sorry. Pro number 8 is Gamera himself. Sorry. I love Gamera in this movie. This is my favorite Gamera design of the entire Gamera series. And Gamera in this movie, I think, is when he is at his very best. He is just a completely no nonsense, badass motherfucker in this movie. He wastes no time coming to the rescue in this movie. Um, and he is just a complete sight to behold all throughout this film. Gamera's design is somewhat similar to his design from Guardian of the Universe. His head is made to be just a little bit smaller, and he gets an upturned snoot, similar to a real turtle. I think it's a Japanese box turtle. Um, and his features are made to look a lot sharper and a lot more sleek. This is the movie that incorporates Gamera as having sea turtle like fins for flying, which a lot of people tend to not be a fan of, but I actually love the the turtle fins. Partially because I think it looks cool, but it also does make sense because it would be a lot more helpful for when Gamera is just flying like Superman. It makes him a lot more aerodynamic so that he can do a lot more um aerodynamic maneuvers while in midair. It would be helpful for combat, that is. Um but overall his design is a lot sleeker and sharper. His claws are a lot more pronounced, and his hands are they're kind of webbed, but they seem to be much more suited for slapping and slashing. Gamera's shell is a lot more curved and smooth. His skin is a lot more smooth as well. He has a bit more of a pronounced hunch, but it looks like it's a more badass and kind of more armored hunch. Um, his face is a lot sleeker and a lot sharper, and they do retain the big expressive eyes from the Guardian of the Universe design while making Gamera's mouth a lot more sleeker and aerodynamic, but he can still open his mouth really wide, like with the Guardian of the Universe design too. Um, and they also keep the elbow spikes permanently protruding out of Gamera's elbows. They're no longer retractable, they're just part of his elbows. But I also think that looks cool too. He always has something to swipe and slash at people with. I think it's really cool. Gamera looks great in this movie, and he is a total badass. When he first shows up to destroy the first Legion flower, well, I mean, he just stares at it for a minute, but he wastes no time in firing off a fireball to partially destroy it. But then he tear asses his way towards the flower and rips that motherfucker from the ground and then blows it up again for good measure. um, he does kind of thrash and flail around a little bit too much when the Legion soldiers attack him. But when the Queen Legion shows up to protect the second flower in Sendai, he wastes no time flying over and trying to bulldoze his way through Queen Legion. though he gets his ass kicked in the process. But probably my favorite, most badass moment of Gamera for the entire franchise, when Gamera is resurrected, he immediately just makes a beeline straight for Queen Legion. He's flying with the fins in midair, but then he like transitions to all fours in midair and he lands on the ground and he slides across the landscape, shooting off fireballs in rapid succession. She deflects them all, but then as soon as he gets in position, he stops mid slide and then just stares at her and roars in defiance. It's a badass dynamic move and is my favorite piece of Gamera action for the whole series. And the final fight between Gamera and Legion, Gamera is just throwing everything he's got. He tries to push her back. He tries to bulldoze himself through her, swipes at her with his hands and his claws, fires off fireballs. Um, he tries his damnedest to take on Queen Legion. She's such a tank powerhouse that he has to literally suck energy from the earth and blow her away with a massive beam of plasma energy. It's so fucking badass and is my favorite Gamera finishing move of the entire series. I used to call it the Mana Flame, but I think Plasma Fire Beam is more appropriate. Gamera is awesome in this movie. I have one slight problem with him in this movie, but when Gamera is on screen, he really is a sight to behold, and he's so badass and fun to watch. Okay, so now proper pro number 9 is the fun monster action. It's really only limited to Gamera destroying the first flower, which is fun, and Gamera being attacked by the Legion soldiers. Gamera's first fight with the Queen Legion, in which he gets the absolute shit kicked out of him, and then Gamera's final fight with the Queen Legion, also mixed in with the Queen Legion fighting the military, and the military also fighting off the Legion soldiers. It's fast paced, it's brutal, it's hard hitting, it's action packed and entertaining as fuck. It's very colorful, it's very bombastic, explosive, and badass, for lack of a better term. This is the kind of monster movies I like: action packed, entertaining, and thrilling. Love it. Not much to say, because admittedly, there's not a whole lot. Well, no, there's a fair bit of monster action, but it's kind of evenly sprinkled out throughout the entire movie. But I love it. And this, of course, is supported by pro number 10 being the amazing special effects. I think the effects are 99% awesome. There's quite a few improvements made over the last movie. The Gamera suit looks a lot better, looks a lot more maneuverable, and a lot more well shot. The movie's also more well edited. The monster action's a lot better. The kaiju choreography is a lot better. Even though Gamera is going up against a very inhuman monster, the kaiju choreography is still quite good and is, again, very hard hitting and fast paced and entertaining. All the explosions look phenomenal. There's a lot more explosions in this movie. Gamera's fireballs look great. All the colors, like the optical effects for the greens, blues, and yellows, look great. Um, Legion Queen's horn beam looks phenomenal. It's a very bright shade of blue, and also her red laser whips look great too. Um, The overall, yeah, the miniature effects look great. The Legion flower looks alien and fleshy and grotesque, but also kind of oddly beautiful to look at too. Um, there are a few shots where the Legion soldiers obviously kind of look like puppets, but I still think they look good. They're guys in suits, mixed with puppetry and animatronics. They all still look great. They move a lot like alien insects. Um, so that's effect or that's fine. I maybe feel like that kind of adds into the fact that they because there are essentially insects, whenever they look like puppets, that kind of adds to their jittery alien and insectoid appearance and movement, for lack of a better term. So yeah, the puppet effects are great. The animatronic effects are great. The suitimation is amazing. The pyrotechnics look great. The CG for the beam effects look great. The miniatures are great. Overall, the effects are absolutely phenomenal. I like these effects way more than I do Gamera Guardian of the Universe. And overall, yeah, Shinji Higuchi was at the top of his game. Yeah, I don't have much to say about this movie, oddly. I have 4 nitpicks for this film, and they're all kind of I wouldn't say they're severe, but they are noteworthy, I'll say, for lack of a better term. Nitpick number 1, Asagi in this movie is completely pointless, and she looks kinda nuts for most of this movie. I think the only reason that she's here is so that there can be a more firm connection between Guardian of the Universe and this movie. But I don't think that was necessary because there are quite a few characters that come back in terms of the military and the government from the first film that make an appearance in this movie. And there's also a shot where you can still see the destroyed Tokyo Tower that Gauss did at the end of Guardian of the Universe. But Asagi being here just feels so pointless. But she also looks crazy because a lot of her dialogue is cryptic, dreamy, and kind of makes her look like she's stoned. But Asagi just spends most of this movie just staring at Gamera with a blank expression on her face, looking crazy. The actress, I don't necessarily think does a bad job playing her. I just don't think she was given very much to work with, and I would have preferred they just cut her out. She does make a good return in the next movie, and her performance in that film is much stronger. But her placement here is completely superfluous, in my opinion. Nitpick number 2, the one problem that I have with the effects is the CGI. There's quite a bit more CGI in this movie. There's a couple shots when the Queen Legion is fully CG. When she's in flight, I don't mind her being CGI because Queen Legion herself is so alien and insect like and intricate. I don't really think you could have done that practically, so I'm fine with that. But there's a couple shots where she like one when she burrows underground, which I think that was a composite shot, but when she gets blasted by Gamera, she like scurries away to give herself some distance, and it's obvious that she's CG, and it sticks out like a sore thumb because it feels kind of unnecessary. You could have done that effect practically. So why the hell did you need to use the CG for it? But the CGI missiles all look pretty bad. Um, and when the Legion soldiers are flying in a swarm, spawning from Queen Legion's body, when they're flying through the sky, it's a CG cloud of Legion soldiers, and it looks terrible. It looks like a swarm of locusts from the 1999 Mummy movie. But hands down, the worst effect in this movie is when Gamera gets swarmed by the Legion soldiers after destroying the first flower. They had a CG model of Gamera that had this blanket of Legion soldiers slowly crawl over his entire body, and it looks absolutely awful. It looks like a cutscene from a PS1 video game. It sticks out like a sore thumb, especially considering right after that shot is shown, they show the Gamera suit being practically covered by a whole bunch of Legion soldiers, and that looks so much better. And then when you go back and look at this CGI Gamera shot, it looks awful. Also, whenever Gamera transforms into his flying saucer form as CG, it also looks pretty bad. You don't get a super clear shot of him, thankfully, but still, he looks pretty ass, in my opinion. Nitpick number three is all of the human characters in this movie I find to be kind of unremarkable. The cast camaraderie is very strong, and all the human characters collectively leave a strong impression with how well they work together. But none of the characters stick out uh, in a positive way. They're all just very kind of flat military personnel. That's not entirely a terrible thing, and it's not like Shin Godzilla or Neon Genesis Evangelion. But yeah, none of the human characters are remarkable in the slightest, in my opinion. Not a big issue, and again, the cast camaraderie kind of makes up for the fact that none of the characters are remarkable, but it is still noteworthy. But the kind of biggest nitpick that I have with this movie is kind of it's a double-edged sword. Gamera, hold on. Harkening back to the Showa series, in this movie, Gamera is kind of a big gun. And also, he doesn't have as much screen time as I initially thought. Gamera has roughly 12 minutes and 50 seconds of screen time in a 1 hour and 40-minute film. I think that's exactly 3 minutes more than he had in Gamera versus Barugan. And I'm not entirely sure if that's a good or bad thing because I don't think he has very much screen time in the next movie. I don't quite remember because I haven't seen Gamera 3 since 2018, but I could be wrong. But I think he has even less screen time in that movie. But with Gamera having just barely 13 minutes of screen time, I kind of can't help but feel a little disappointed by that. But at the same time, because Gamera is such a tank powerhouse sight to behold in this movie, and he's so badass and fun to watch, I do think that kind of makes up for the lack of screen time. Because he's so badass, he leaves a strong impression on the viewer. So you don't really notice the lack of screen time. But if you want to watch this movie for Gamera, you might be a tad bit disappointed at the kind of lack of Gamera screen time. Not a big problem by any means, and really none of these nitpicks are huge problems in and of themselves, but they are still quite noteworthy. So, damn, I really didn't have much to say about this movie. For it being my favorite Gamera movie, yeah, just I don't have much to say. I really like Gamera 2: Advent of Legion. I think it's a damn solid monster movie. It's my favorite of the entire Gamera franchise. And yeah, I do think it is one of the most underrated Gamera films. Sure, it has its fans, but I don't think quite this movie has the amount of attention that I think it deserves. I will be giving Gamera 2: Advent of Legion a very solid 9.5 out of 10. This is the closest to a 10 out of 10 Gamera movie that we'll get. It's just those four nitpicks that hold it from being a perfect 10, but I highly recommend Gamera 2. It's a great kick-ass monster movie. It's got lots of explosions and hard-hitting monster action. If that's what you want, this movie will deliver. So post your comments down below and let me know what you think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and share this video with your friends. And look forward to next time on Super Kaiju Binge, where I tackle a huge fan favorite monster movie that I am not a big fan of, with Gamera 3, Revenge of Iris. Look forward to that. And as always, go out and if you see a bunch of glass bottles mysteriously disappearing, you might want to run. And I'll see you guys in the next video.